Hello and welcome to the My School channel. My name is Angela, and in this video we're going to continue the government topic by topic video lesson. So we're moving on to a new topic titled public corporations, where we're going to talk about government organizations that provide essential services to the public. So please stay with us, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the My School channel. Like I said earlier, we're moving on to public corporations, so let's dive right into it. Alright, so here are a list of the things we're going to be discussing in this video lesson. We'll discuss definition, characteristics, reasons for setting up public corporations, the functions, the structure of public corporations, the differences between public corporations and the civil service, the control of public corporations, and various concepts such as privatization, commercialization, and deregulation. So let's dive right into it. Alright, we're going to begin with the definition of public corporations. Public corporations are government-owned entities established by an act of parliament to provide essential services to the public. So there are three things important in this definition. The first is that they are government-owned entities. That means that they are owned by the government. Then it is established by an act of parliament. So we talked about how there are certain acts that help to bring certain organizations into being. So public corporations are brought into being by acts of parliament, a decision made by the legislature. Then another thing to note in this definition is the fact that they provide essential services to the public, things that the public need in order to carry out their day-to-day activities in the society. The public corporations are responsible for that. So let's move on to the next slide. Alright, these corporations operate as legal entities, often with a degree of autonomy, but are funded by the government. So they are legal entities, that means they can sue and be sued. They operate with a degree of autonomy. They are usually independent of the government, but in spite of that, they are still funded by the government. They aim to serve the public interest rather than generate profits, although some may operate commercially. So some of these public corporations, they generate profits, but that is not their primary aim. Their primary aim is to provide essential services to the public. Examples of public corporations in Nigeria include the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, or NNPC, the Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria, and the Nigerian Ports Authority. Now let's move on to the next slide. Alright, what are the characteristics of public corporation? One of them is that they are owned by the government. Public corporations are fully or partially owned by the government, which maintains control over their activities and management. Their primary goal is to provide services rather than maximize profits, and any revenue generated is reinvested into the organization or the public sector. So they are owned by the government. Since they are owned by the government, they do not primarily generate profits because the government is responsible for providing essential services to the people to make life easier for the people. So that is their primary aim. They do generate profits sometimes, but this is not their primary aim. They generate profits, and whatever profits they generate, they reinvest into the corporation or into other public sectors of the economy. Now let's move on to the next slide. Alright, so another characteristic is that they provide essential services. They are established to provide essential services that are considered critical for national development and public welfare, such as electricity, water supply, transportation, and communication. So these are the essential services that they provide. We need electricity, we need water supply, we need transportation, and we need radio and television stations that help to broadcast information to us. So these are very essential services, and the government provide them. Examples of corporations that provide these essential services include the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation and the Nigerian Railway Corporation. The Nigerian Railway Corporation is responsible for providing railway transportation for the citizens. Let's move on to another characteristic. They are also created by special acts of parliament. Public corporations are created through specific legislation or government decrees, which outline their purpose, power, structure, and scope of operation. So within that act that have been created by the legislature, you see all of these things. What do they do? What are the powers that they have within the society? What is the structure, the hierarchy within the corporation? And what is the scope of operation? What do they essentially do? Right? They define what they do so that they do not go beyond that scope when they are performing their duties. So the Act provides them with a legal framework and defines their relationship with the government and the public. Now let's move on to another characteristic. So they also have legal standing. These corporations are legal entities, meaning that they can sue or be sued in their own capacity. They have their own legal identity separate from the government, which allows them to enter contracts, own property, and manage their own affairs. So they work like an independent organization. They can sue other organizations and they can be sued when they do not perform their responsibility ethically or in the right manner. Now let's move on to another characteristic. They also have board of directors. Public corporations are typically governed by a board of directors appointed by the government. The board oversees the corporation's policies, strategies, and financial decisions. They ensure that the organization operates efficiently and aligns with its public mandates. So they have a board of directors that make executive decisions for the corporation. Let's move on to another one. Okay, they also make independent decisions. So although government-owned public corporations often have operational independence, they are free to make decisions regarding their daily operations, financial management, and service delivery without direct political interference. All the political heads involved in the public corporation, what they do is that they provide policy guidelines. They do not tell them what to do. They just tell them to align with the objectives of the government in power. But they make their own financial decisions and all other decisions that has to do with the operation of the corporation. Now let's move on to the next one. All right, they are also public servants. Employees of public corporations are considered public servants as they work for government-owned entities. They enjoy benefits similar to those of other public sector workers and are governed by public service rules depending on the nature of the corporation. So they are public servants just like the Nigerian police force, the civil service, etc. Now let's move on to the next slide. All right, so we're going to discuss the reasons for setting up public corporations. Why are public corporations set up? First of all, they provide essential services. Public corporations are established to deliver critical services like electricity, water, transportation, and healthcare, which are fundamental to the well-being of citizens. So these services are considered too important to be left to the private sector where profit motives may reduce accessibility. So some of these public corporations are formed in order to ensure that these services are provided without that need to produce profits that usually guides private sector. You know, most of the private companies we have in the country, their primary motive is to generate profits, and sometimes they do that at the detriment of providing essential services to the common people. And that reason for setting up public corporation is to prevent exploitation. So by creating public corporations, the government can prevent exploitation of consumers by private companies. Essential services provided by the government are often subsidized to allow access for all citizens, including the underprivileged in the society. So it helps to prevent exploitation. Again, that profit motive can prevent the private companies from seeing how important these services are to the people within the society. And that reason for setting up public corporations is huge capital involvement. So many essential industries such as power generation, transportation, and telecommunication require significant investments that the private sector may be reluctant to undertake due to the high risks or long-term returns. So the government through public corporations can afford to invest in these capital-intensive projects for the public good. So when we're talking about power generation, we're talking about the Power Holding Company of Nigeria, for example, transportation, the Nigerian Railway Corporation, telecommunications, the radio and television stations owned by Nigeria, for example, the Nigerian Television Authority. So some of these organizations, they are not undertaken by private sector because of the amount of money they have to invest in creating these companies. They may be reluctant to start these companies, and because of that, the government has to take it upon themselves. They can use taxpayer money to generate these companies so that they can provide the essential services that the citizens of the country need. And that reason for setting up public corporation is the provision of employment. Public corporations create jobs for citizens, reducing unemployment rates and contributing to economic stability. So this employment extends beyond direct staff to other related sectors, supporting livelihoods and improving the overall economy. So one of the duties of the government is to provide employment to the citizens of the country, and they can do that through the creation of public corporations. People can be employed under these corporations. Now let's move on to the next slide. Okay, and that reason for setting up public corporations is raising people's standard of living. So the services provided by public corporations like affordable housing, education, and healthcare improve the quality of life for the general population. Access to essential services ensures that people can lead healthier, more productive lives. So generation of power electricity, generation of water, communication, services, transportation, etc. All of these things help to raise the people's standard of living. When transportation is cheaper, when the ability to generate power is also cheaper for the citizens, it helps to raise their standard of living. They don't have to pay lots of money for electricity, for water, and their basic necessities, so they can use their money for other important things. So it helps to raise the people's standard of living. And that reason for setting up public corporation is for economic growth. So by investing in strategic sectors, public corporations drive national development, they stimulate economic activities, support infrastructural development, and facilitate the growth of industries, which in turn boosts the country's GDP. So sometimes there are certain sectors that the government needs to invest in order to improve economic growth. For example, the oil sector. They created the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation in order to ensure that the oil sector continues to create economic growth within the country. So this is one of the reasons for setting up public corporations. Then we also have strategic projects. Some projects such as national defense, maintenance of currency, arms production, energy security, etc. are considered too vital to national interests to be left to private enterprises. So public corporations are established to manage and control such strategic assets in the nation's best interest. For example, the Central Bank of Nigeria is responsible for maintenance of currency. No other private organization is allowed to do that. So they also take charge of national defense, the production of arms, weapons, and energy security. For example, with the Power Holding Company of Nigeria and the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, they're responsible for providing energy. So all of these things are too vital for national interest to be left to the private sector. So they control some of these sectors. Another reason for setting up public corporations is revenue generation. So in addition to providing services, public corporations generate revenue for the government through fees, tariffs, and other charges for services rendered. So this revenue can be reinvested into public infrastructure and services. So it is not their primary aim, but this also generates revenue. So this revenue generated can be reinvested into the public sector to create more infrastructure, more roads, electricity, water supply, etc. So it is one of the reasons for setting up public corporations. Let's move on to the next slide. All right, so we're going to discuss the structure of public corporations. So they have a hierarchy within the public corporation too. So it begins with the political head. The political head, which is the minister, is responsible for offering policy guidelines for the board of directors to follow and ensuring that the corporation aligns with government objectives. So they do not guide the activities of the public corporation. What they do is offer policy guidelines. Remember, ministers are part of the executive arm of government. The executive arm is responsible for creating and implementing policies. So the minister just makes the public corporations aware of the fact that there are certain policies that have been created by the government in power, and they need to implement these policies within their corporation. So they just guide them in terms of policy. They are not invested in the day-to-day operation of the public corporation. The set of people that are interested in the day-to-day operation are the chairman and the board of directors. So the chairman is the leader of the board of directors and plays a crucial role in the governance of the public corporation. He is appointed by the government and presides over board meetings and ensures effective discussion. So just like other appointees, they are appointed by the president and ratified by the legislature. So what it does is it presides over the board meetings and ensures that they discuss how to implement those policies that have been given to them by the minister, and also to ensure that certain financial decisions, operation decisions are made to suit the corporation, to ensure that they continue to perform their activities appropriately. So the board of directors is a group of appointed individuals responsible for overseeing the corporation and making high-level decisions. They approve budgets, policies, and major projects. So the chairman is the chairman of the board. So the chairman, along with the board of directors, are responsible for making those decisions that help to ensure that the public corporation runs smoothly. Then we have the managing director. The managing director is the senior executive responsible for the day-to-day operations of the corporation. So they implement the strategies and policies that have been set by the board of directors. The board of directors make the decision. The managing director implements the decisions that have been made. Then we have key senior officers. So these senior officers are individuals in charge of specific departments within the corporation, such as finance, marketing, operations, and human resources. Then we have middle management. So this middle management oversee the work of lower level employees and coordinates activities among different departments. They ensure that tasks are completed in line with the corporation's goal. Then we have staff and employees. So they include all the personnel who carry out the daily activities of the corporation. They work under the guidance of middle management and are essential for the implementation of operational tasks. So this is the chain of authority. It begins with the political head. Remember, the political head is not responsible for making important decisions. They just make the corporation aware of the policies that are meant to be followed by the corporation, the policy of the government in power. The chairman is the head. Is the one, he along with the board of directors, are responsible for implementing certain policies or making certain decisions within the corporation. It is the managing director who implement those policies, those decisions that have been made by the chairman and board of directors. Then we have key senior officers, middle management, and then staff and employees within the corporation. So we've come to the end of this segment of the video lesson. I believe it was educative and enlightening. If you would like to continue with us, please go down to the link in the description below. This takes you to my school website where you can subscribe for the government's topic by topic video lesson. Then you can continue this journey with us. So we're going to move on to control of the civil service. And then we're going to discuss three important concepts: the concept of privatization, commercialization, and deregulation. So I hope to see you there. I believe you're enjoying this content. If yes, please do not forget to hit the like button, click on the subscribe button, and lastly tap on the notification bell to get informed as soon as we release the next videos.